Thank you all for joining us today. For me, it's really both a pleasure and a great honor to be here and to share with you our journey in implementing EPAS in Romania and in developing actually the first national program for adult literacy in the country. First, I wouldn't want to move further before congratulating for all the efforts that UNESCO Institute for Learning is doing for adult literacy and adult education. And so thank you all for all your efforts and support. I'll be happy to share with you our journey today, hoping to emphasize and underline some of the steps that we have taken and also some of the lessons learned, because as Nicola was mentioning, we have been having several difficulties and challenges, more challenges than results actually, unfortunately, up until now, but we have made significant progress and we're really quite happy about all this. First, our goal and the goal of our project is to actually evaluate our adults' key cognitive competencies. And we're doing this because we want to have an, let's say, overall understanding, a solid understanding based on data, and to have a clear idea of our adult cognitive skills, literacy and numeracy. And we added something more elements to that, because we want to implement a strategy, a national strategy for adult education, and to, of course, elaborate an action plan to tackle the current situation and to improve the current situation. Our journey goes back in 2018, because Roshan just mentioned, we wanted to, at that time, to implement PIAC Cycle 2, because the national authorities in Romania realized at that time that it's time for change in the country and that we really need solid data to rely on in order to move forward and have a national strategy for adult literacy and adult education. But due to some very significant difficulties ranging from, let's say, administrative challenges and bureaucracy and financial constraints, which weren't quite neglectable, we couldn't run PIAC at that time. And we actually realized that we have very limited institutional resources to run and to implement a national program dedicated to adult literacy. We were in that situation at that time. We are still somehow now, but we have made some progress in these lines. For those of you interested in, let's say, starting in running and in using EPAS or thinking in improving the cognitive competencies levels in your country, I would like to share to you some of the layers that we realized that we need in order to start working. We wanted solid data and reliable data in order to know where we stand. And in Romania, what we have is the Eurostat's data. Maybe you are familiar with that. It's the data that tells us the rates of the lifelong learning, rates of adults that are participating in education, non-formal education, of course. And we also knew also know that we need a national representative survey to evaluate our adult cognitive skills. We did not have that at that time. You need data, but you also need how to reach that data. You really need cognitive tests, literacy, numeracy to start with. And I would say that it is mandatory to have well-established instruments to evaluate adult key cognitive competencies, because this is very, very important because there are a lot of, let's say, options and scales that you can use at a certain time. But I would say that in order to reach solid data and to have a clear idea of your adult cognitive competencies rates, you really need to use solid instruments in that. And the third layer that was the most painful one in our case was the one linked with resources. And I'm sure that you are all very much aware of the situation. You need to secure funding, and I will get back to this for the translations, for the adaptations, for the data collection. This is the most painful part in that. I will move forward to that. Just to wrap up of the first minutes of my presentation now, that in order to get data for literacy and numeracy in Romania, we started from the point that we have no previous study that has been measuring the skills, and that we don't have solid data to rely on. We wanted to run a national strategy and an action plan, but we had to start somewhere. So this is why and how we started. From our experience, we had to negotiate several times, several for months why we need this data, because I'm sure that this happens in other countries also. Although you start the project, you constantly need to reinforce and to bring arguments why you need to continue and why you need to spend money on this kind of projects. And now, because we are handy with the pandemic and with the climate change related conspiracy theories, we give, let's say, concrete arguments and daily arguments of what happens in our lives, in our societies, and why we need to be fully equipped in order to, let's say, be resilient from this point of view. And so we use many types of arguments in this respect. And we also use arguments in terms of why do we need a national program for adult literacy. We use the arguments coming from literacy and also media literacy, because we know we have studies that show that the media literacy has a significant impact on how we actually read and understand what we're reading from the media outlets. And also what is very easy to understand, the fact that media and social media and instant media platforms are the main vehicle for disinformation and for fake news spread and so on and so forth. So once we have our adults with higher levels of literacy and numeracy, we will be able to be less vulnerable as individuals and as societies, and to be more ready, for instance, to develop in a sustainable way. A very side note, it could be like considered like something funny that happened, but it's really quite sad, and it's a part of what can happen if you have low rates in literacy. 1 year ago, in March 2020, we were facing a national hysteria, and it's really not a metaphor, because we had a problem. We had the gas price crisis, which started from a fake news spread on WhatsApp. People received on their phones, it was mass circulated a message with a picture saying that the gas price will go incredibly higher. This was immediately covered by some very well-known mainstream media. It was on TV. It was all over the place in a few hours. And this blocked actually all gas stations in Romania and the streets and everything, because people got scared, of course, and they started, and the gas stations were blocked because of the huge number of clients willing to buy gas before the price went higher. This was fake news. But because people weren't able and weren't fully equipped and prepared how to read this kind of data, this is what happened. Closing the side note. And reaching to our project to Educat, how we rebaptized, as Nicola said. It is the first program that Romania is running in order to evaluate our adults' key cognitive skills, and it has been running for some years, trying to get to the data collection process. If you are heading towards the data collection process, you probably already know that there are some significant difficulties that can come when you want really to collect data, because this is something really important. Some of the steps that we consider are relevant for people and for authorities and for agencies that want to start running this kind of a project. I would emphasize the importance and the high relevance and importance of having this project approved by high national authorities. This is very important, because once you have a high support, things will get a little bit more easy. Knowing your stakeholders, I think it's crucial at this step, because you will see that some of the challenges that may come are linked with the fact that your stakeholders may be somehow reluctant to the project. Partnership with an international organization like UNESCO's Institute for Learning is not just that we're working with them, but I would strongly say that it's extremely important to have a partner that has been doing this kind of studies and has extensive knowledge and experience in actually implementing the surveys in the country. And then select what is important and what is suitable for your country's profile and objectives. And as Nicola mentioned, EPAS with the in the frame of the background questionnaire is very flexible. And we used it in a very flexible way, and we developed the background questionnaire in order to add some scales and some questions that actually fit our needs and our requirements. It's also important to have a time frame for your implementation. We were a disaster at this point, and when we learned a lot. And also you have to consider all your budget constraints, because make sure you can afford it. We dreamed of having many things in this project, but then we realized that it's really not feasible and not possible in doing so. Make sure you secure resources. Of course, it would be easier to have domestic funding for this and to have a very easy to use mechanism, but it's not always working like this. If you are going towards the international funding mechanism, make sure that you are fully aware of how you can spend the money and on what types of activities. Also, I would say that what we learned is that we have to make a decision about how you will be collecting data and how the data collection and sampling process will take place in your country, because this is the most problematic part that we had in Romania. And don't forget about consulting your stakeholders, because this activity of stakeholder consultation is extremely important. You have to get support from all those experts working in education in your country, in labor force, people from ministries of several fields, and government and NGOs even, and local communities, also very important. Do I still have time?
You still have 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, I will speed. Just very short about the instruments that we have been using. As Nicolas mentioned, the background questionnaire is very flexible. Besides the cognitive booklet, the cognitive test, the literacy and numeracy, we added to the background questionnaire an ICT skill, the internet skills, and another scale of perception of employability. These latter were very important for us because we wanted to measure the digital skills and internet skills of our adults, and also how they perceive themselves on the labor market. And also something that we did before we started to collect data, which we're in the process of doing finally, we did an internal pre-testing of the translations and adaptations of the instruments. And this is very important, because once you translate and adapt the instruments, which is of course something that is mandatory, it's not enough. You will see it once you are running it. It's very important that before you start collecting real data, that you test the translations and adaptations, and that's important that you do so in, let's say, people that are working in and have a lower social economic status, in order to be sure that the questions that you are asking in your survey are easy to read and easy to understand. So this is a very important part. So I will, I prepared several slides, but I will skip to end the presentation with the challenges that we had. I would say that data collection and our intention of running a national representative study was the most painful part in our project implementation, because we were lacking extensive knowledge of the legal requirements and the public procurement process that were suitable for this type of data collection and this type of procurement. We had difficulties in actually understanding what would be the procedure, what would be the most appropriate procedure in doing so. And we had more than 20 months delay due to these limitations and constraints. And this, of course, is actually extremely bad for the project implementation, because we have delayed a lot the data collection from this point of view. Another challenge that we had, I would say, is regarding the funding and the decision making, because we managed to secure the funding, but we didn't manage to secure the funding for specific activities that we needed in the project. And then we had to move the funding from one part of the budget to another. And having in mind that these are public money, it's really something quite challenging to do. And also make sure that the decision making, it is at a high level, and you get all the support that it's possible to get in your country for this project, because it's something that it's really important from this point of view. Our current status at this moment is that we are ending the public procurement procedures, and we are going to sign the contract with a consortium that is going to collect data. We plan to organize a conference on adult literacy evaluation and to share our lessons on that. but I will skip to what we have learned because I'm sure that I'm heading towards the end of my presentation. I would say that what we have learned that just a general thought that working with the UNESCO Institute of Learning was really something that helped us a lot. We took benefit of the expertise and we had constant support. And what is also very important besides all these is that you can get the standardized instruments. And this is very, very important to have well-established instruments in order to measure adults' key cognitive skills. What we have learned also is that we have to navigate tensions with the national administration and with other stakeholders. And this took a lot of time. In doing so. And we also have learned that if we would have had more expertise, relevant expertise in public procurement procedures relevant for this kind of case, our life would have been much easier. Make sure you secure your funding and that you get the high-level support. Don't forget that. And that it's important to have a constant and the stakeholders consultation is very important. I hope I somehow made it in time. Thank you all for joining us. And if you have questions, I would love to answer on that. Thank you.